Every Friday night, my husband disappeared. Same time, same lie. I thought it was another woman until I followed him to a church that's not even supposed to be open. What I saw inside still keeps me up at night. I honestly don't know how to start this without sounding like a cliche, but screw it. Here goes. For the past year, every single Friday night, my husband Aaron would vanish. Not completely, just emotionally. He'd get this distant look around 6 p.m., like something was clawing at his brain. Then he'd say the same line. I've got a thing with the guys tonight. You know how it is. Number dot. Actually, Aaron. I didn't know how it is. And after 12 months of this, I started wondering if maybe the guys had names like Jessica or Brittany. But let me back up a bit. We've been married for 6 years. No major problems. At least, not on the surface. We have a 3-year-old daughter, Claire, who lights up my whole world. I've been staying home with her since she was born, and Aaron's job pays well enough that I've never had to go back to work. On paper, we were solid. But Friday nights, they were different. He'd leave right after dinner, sometimes skipping dessert, which he never used to do. He wouldn't answer calls or texts until the next morning. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe they're just decompressing, playing poker, having a few beers. But then I started noticing little things. He'd come home in a different shirt. I found a receipt once in his coat pocket. 2 glasses of red wine at a restaurant I'd never heard of. He doesn't even drink wine. And his best friend, Jake? I called him one night, just casually. Hey, is Aaron with you guys tonight? Jake hesitated. Yeah, of course. The way he said it made my stomach flip. So I started writing things down. What he wore, what time he left, what he smelled like. I know it sounds obsessive, but if you've ever had that gnawing gut feeling, the kind that whispers, something is wrong, you'll understand. Then one Friday, I followed him, dropped Claire off at my mom's, said I needed a mental health night. I waited until he left. He didn't go to Jake's, didn't go to any bar or restaurant or casino. He drove to this rundown part of town, parked behind a half-collapsed church, and walked inside. No lights, no music, no other cars, just him, vanishing into that dark, creaky old building. I thought, maybe it's some kind of AA meeting, but Aaron barely drank. Why lie? Next morning I asked, how was Jake? He smiled. Same as always. Beat me at poker. Again. I wanted to scream, but I said nothing. I needed more. So the next week I went back, and the next. Same routine, same church, same time. Then I got brave. I walked up to the side of the building and peeked in through a cracked window. That's when the nightmare started. 6 people sitting in a circle, 5 chairs filled. One was empty, Aaron's, candles, photos on the floor. A newspaper clipping that read, Family found after fatal fire. One of the photos showed a little boy. I froze. Was this a cult? A grief group? Then Aaron walked in, sat down, and a woman said, All right, Aaron, do you want to start us off tonight? He took a breath and said, I had the dream again, about the fire, about them. That night I couldn't sleep. Who was them? I dug into his past, found nothing between age 10 and 20, not one photo. I asked his aunt over coffee. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Sweetie, Aaron never told you? Told me what? It wasn't just his parents who died in that fire. He had a sister, Lydia. She was 6. He was 11. I nearly dropped my mug. He blamed himself, said he left a candle burning, but the investigators called it a tragic accident. That night, I cried in the shower. Everything made sense. And yet, nothing did. The next Friday, I told him, I followed you. His face went pale. I know about the church, the group, Lydia. His eyes filled with tears. I thought you'd leave me, he whispered, and then he told me everything. After Lydia's death, he went mute for a year. Therapy helped, barely. The group was recent, after a breakdown at work. He lied because it felt like shame, not healing. I forgave him. But the story doesn't end there, because the next week, he didn't go to the group. He said he felt strong enough to skip it. We went to the park instead. That night, our house caught fire. Faulty wiring, they said. But Aaron, he collapsed, screamed at the firemen. It's happening again. It's my fault. We all got out, but the house was destroyed. Now we're staying with my mom. Aaron's in therapy twice a week. The group meets somewhere else now. I go with him sometimes. But here's the part I haven't told anyone. When I went back to the burnt wreck of our home to salvage what I could, in Claire's room, untouched by the flames, was a single candle, unlit, still whole, and next to it, a photo of a little girl I'd never seen before, in a frame I didn't recognize. On the back, in faded handwriting, for Lydia, never forget. Aaron swears he didn't put it there. Neither did I. And now I keep asking myself the same question. If Lydia's watching over us, what exactly is she trying to tell us? I didn't say anything to Aaron about the photo, not right away. Because honestly, I was scared. Not of him, never of him, but scared of what it meant. Scared of the way my hands were still shaking 2 hours later. Scared of how Claire said something that night that I can't get out of my head. She was brushing her teeth before bed, at my mom's place where we've been staying since the fire, and she looked up at me in the mirror and said, "Mommy, the girl with the braid said I was lucky." I froze. "What girl, honey?" "The one in the fire. She was holding the candle." I knelt beside her. What did she look like? She thought for a second, then said, "Like me, but sad." I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I finally showed Aaron the photo. His reaction was immediate. He gasped. His hands shook. "That's her," he whispered. "That's Lydia's picture." But it burned. I saw it burn when I was a kid. It was in her room when the fire started. I told him exactly where I found it. His face turned white. "I swear on my life I didn't put it there." Then he said something that chilled me deeper than the cold night air ever could. "Maybe she put it there for Claire." We don't talk about ghosts in our family, but suddenly I wasn't so sure what I believed anymore, especially when Aaron went to the next grief group session and came back different. Not upset, not sad, almost peaceful. I asked him what happened, and he said, "Lydia spoke through someone tonight." I laughed. I couldn't help it. He wasn't joking. "She said something no one else could know, something I never told anyone, not even you." I asked what it was. He looked at me, voice trembling. "She said I used to sneak her pieces of chocolate under the table when Mom wasn't looking. And she said, 'Tell Aaron I forgive him.'" The room went silent. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to believe. But the next night, something happened. Claire woke up crying, screaming. Aaron and I rushed to her room. She was pointing at the corner. "She's back," she sobbed, "but she's not sad this time." We saw nothing. But I'll tell you this. The room felt different. Warm, still, almost safe. Like someone was watching, but not in a scary way. Aaron sat on the bed and held Claire, whispering, "It's okay. She's just watching over you." And Claire nodded. Since then, there've been little things. The smell of vanilla in a room no one's been in. Candles appearing where we didn't leave them. Claire talking to people we can't see. And each time, Aaron smiles. A little sad, but less broken than he used to be. He says Lydia never got to grow up. But maybe, somehow, she's still here. Watching. Protecting. And now I have a question I never thought I'd ask. What if the fire wasn't just a tragedy? What if it was a beginning? It's been 3 weeks since the night Claire said the girl wasn't sad anymore. And I swear, ever since then, it feels like something has shifted in our lives. At first it was subtle, a door creaking open without a breeze, a lullaby playing from Claire's toy piano, even though no one touched it. The baby monitor crackling softly at 3 a.m., and then going dead silent when I entered the room. But then it got more deliberate. Last Thursday, I opened a box in our storage unit, one I know I hadn't touched in years, and right on top, resting perfectly flat, was a child's drawing. Crayon, torn edges. It showed a little girl with 2 long braids holding hands with a taller boy. I stared at it for a long time before I flipped it over. In faded pencil, in handwriting I didn't recognize. Me and Aaron. Forever. I took it home and showed it to him. His knees gave out. He sat on the floor just holding it, silent. Then he whispered, "She drew this the night before the fire." I didn't even ask how he knew. I could see it in his eyes. He just knew. Later that night, he said something that made my blood run cold. He said, "Maybe she's not the only one reaching out." At first, I thought he meant Claire, but he shook his head. Number, I mean, you. You're finding things, remembering things. Things connected to my past, things I thought were gone. I opened my mouth to speak, but stopped. Because in that moment, I realized something. He was right. It wasn't just Lydia's presence I was feeling. It was like someone else wanted me to see all of this, to piece something together. And then, the dreams started. They weren't mine. I don't know how to explain it. I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, the image of a burning door seared into my brain. A woman's voice screaming from another room. A tiny hand slipping from mine. But when I looked around, everything was normal. And yet, not. Because every time I had one of these dreams, Claire would wake up too, always saying the same thing. She says not to be scared. I finally asked her, "Claire, who's talking to you?" She looked at me like I was the one being silly. "The girl with the candle. She's trying to help." I started doing research, not just on the fire that killed Aaron's family, but on other fires, other strange tragedies around that part of town. And guess what? That church Aaron was going to, the one that held the grief group, it used to be something else, an orphanage. It burned down in the 1980s. 5 children died. 1 was never found. The missing child's name? Lydia. I showed the article to Aaron. He looked at it for a long time, jaw clenched, silent. Then he said, "No, that can't be. My Lydia died in our house in 2001, but the photo, the girl in the article, she looked exactly like the girl in the picture I found in Claire's room. Same braids, same face, same name." We sat in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, I whispered, "What if your sister wasn't just your sister?" He didn't understand, so I said it again. "What if Lydia wasn't really your sister? What if she was someone else's child, adopted, hidden? What if your family was keeping a secret, and this is how it's coming out?" Aaron looked like he couldn't breathe, and suddenly he said something I'll never forget. "My mom used to call her my little miracle, but she wasn't pregnant before we got her." He stood up, pacing. I thought it was just a turn of phrase, but what if they took her in after the fire? What if she survived that fire and then died in ours? I didn't want to believe it, but something was unraveling, something big, something buried for decades. And now it felt like Lydia, or whatever is left of her, wasn't just haunting us. She was showing us the truth, piece by piece, memory by memory, flame by flame. A week after we found the article about the orphanage fire, I convinced Aaron to talk to his uncle. Not his aunt, The sweet, jittery woman who made cookies and cried when she told me about Lydia. No, I mean his uncle. The one who barely spoke. The one who raised Aaron after the fire, but always felt distant. We drove to his house on a gray Sunday afternoon. The air felt heavy, like it knew something we didn't. Aaron was silent the whole way there, just white-knuckling the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. When I reached over and squeezed his hand, he didn't squeeze back. His uncle lived alone now. His aunt had passed a few years ago. Cancer. When we knocked, he opened the door with a look like he'd been expecting us. Not surprised, not happy, just tired. We sat at his kitchen table. I had Claire on my lap. She was drawing something on a napkin with a purple marker. Aaron didn't waste time. "Uncle Tom," he said, "who was Lydia, really?" The old man blinked once, then again, then laughed. A soft, bitter sound that didn't touch his eyes. "I was wondering when you'd start asking." He poured himself a whiskey at 2 in the afternoon and sat down across from us. And this is what he told us. Lydia wasn't legally Aaron's sister. She wasn't adopted through any agency, no papers, no birth certificate. She just appeared. One night in 1996, Aaron's parents were driving home from a weekend trip. They took a wrong turn through an old neighborhood that had been nearly abandoned after a fire years earlier. That's where they found her, wandering, alone, covered in ash. She was 6 years old. "They should have taken her to the police," Uncle Tom said. "They knew that. But your mother, she couldn't let her go." Aaron whispered, "So she just brought her home?" Tom nodded. "Told the neighbors she was a distant cousin's kid. Said her name was Lydia. Said she'd be staying with them for a while." "But for how long?" I asked. My voice sounded distant, like I was watching myself from the outside. Tom looked down at his hands. That was the thing. Every time someone asked about Lydia, your mom would say, "Just until she's ready." I felt something cold slide down my spine. Aaron looked like he was going to be sick. "She lived with us for 5 years, Tom went on. "She never aged, never got taller, never got sick. But she remembered things, vivid things, things no child should have known. And then, one night," he paused, took a shaky breath. "One night, the fire started." I felt Claire shift in my lap. She had stopped drawing. I looked down and felt my chest tighten. She had drawn the same picture as before. The girl with braids, holding hands with a boy. Only this time there was something behind them. A shadow, a tall figure with no face, standing near a house in flames. Tom kept talking. "It started in Lydia's room. No cause ever found. Your parents didn't make it. Lydia's body was gone, vanished. The firefighters said maybe she was vaporized in the heat, but they couldn't explain why the walls of her room were untouched." He looked at Aaron then. "I didn't tell you because I thought it would break you. But now, I think she never left." Aaron got up, walked out, didn't say a word. I followed a minute later, carrying Claire, who had fallen completely silent. We didn't speak the entire ride home. That night, Aaron couldn't sleep. He sat on the edge of the bed, just staring out the window. At one point, I heard him whisper, "She followed me, all this time, through everything." And then, from Claire's room, we heard her voice. Not scared, not upset, just calm. She says he didn't listen, and now it's almost time. I don't know what's coming, but something tells me this isn't about just one fire. It's about all of them. And someone, or something, is making sure the truth comes out, no matter what burns down in the process. After the fire, after the photo, after the candle that shouldn't have been there, we tried to move on. Tried. Aaron poured himself into therapy. I started journaling, meditation, desperately Googled things like signs of haunting, grief transference, children talking to ghosts. But Claire, she changed. She became quieter, not scared, not exactly, just distant. She'd stare at corners of the room like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. And every Friday, at exactly 6 p.m., she'd say, "Daddy's going to see the sad people again." We never told her about the group. We never said a word. But somehow she knew. Then one evening, Aaron came home from his session looking pale, shaking. He didn't even take off his shoes, just walked straight to the kitchen, leaned on the counter, and said, "She talked to me." I froze. "You mean?" He nodded. "Lydia. She's not angry anymore, but she's not alone." That night, Claire crawled into bed beside us and whispered, "Lydia says thank you, but someone else is still waiting." I asked, "Who, baby?" She stared at me with those wide, honest eyes only a 3-year-old can have, and said, "The man with no face." We don't sleep much these days. The dreams haven't stopped. Sometimes I wake up and smell smoke. Sometimes I hear soft footsteps in the hallway and find nothing. But the worst part? Last week, Claire drew a picture of our family. 4 stick figures. Me, Aaron, Claire, and a 4th. Tall, faceless, standing just behind us. She handed it to me and smiled. "Don't worry, Mommy," she said. "He's not here for me." That was the moment I knew. The fire was never the end. The candle wasn't a goodbye. It was a warning.